let me get to something, and we're going to be joined by Sharyl Attkisson, who's going to talk more about that with us in just a moment. But did you happen to catch yesterday the House Oversight Committee hearing where they had IT people who helped set up Hillary's email? Well, they all took the fifth, but it was very interesting. First, a little bit of the opening statements.
Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State for nearly 4 years, or roughly 4 years, helped create one of what is reported to be one of the biggest security breaches in the history of the State Department. It is an absolute mess.
I believe this committee is abusing taxpayer dollars and the authority of Congress in an astonishing onslaught of political attacks to damage Secretary Clinton's campaign for President of the United States of America.
All right, so that set the scene. You remember Brian Pagliano, the guy who pleaded the fifth? He made a deal with the FBI, the whole thing. He was the one who set up the server, one of the people involved. Well, he didn't show up yesterday, and Jason Chaffetz talked about what he said to Pagliano's attorney, and then a Democratic Congressman, Stephen Lynch, butted in his 2 cents. Let's watch.
Let the record reflect that Mr. Pagliano was not present at the witness table. The committee invited Mr. Pagliano to testify at the hearing in a letter dated September 7, 2016. Mr. Pagliano informed the committee through his attorneys that he might assert his Fifth Amendment privilege, and I authorized a subpoena for Mr. Pagliano's testimony.
Here's my point. You issued a criminal referral for an individual, and then you asked him to come in here and testify before Congress. Let me
clarify.
That would require him to surrender his Fifth Amendment rights.
And then it was Trey Gowdy's turn to get into the mix.
But as the gentleman from Massachusetts knows, the Fifth
the witness,
Amendment...
he cannot be required to be a witness against himself.
Right, but the Fifth Amendment doesn't protect you from non-incriminating answers.
Well, we've got a criminal referral here.
Not on him. He can say his name.
Sure it is.
He can say where he worked.
Sure
Every answer
it was
doesn't
issued after
incriminate
The gentleman from Massachusetts will suspend.
Okay, and then the 3 witnesses who did show up were of absolutely no help.
We have not received any written testimony from today's witnesses. Mr. Combetta, do you intend to make an opening statement?
On advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer and assert my Fifth Amendment privilege.
Mr. Thornton, do you intend to make an opening statement?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer and assert my Fifth Amendment constitutional privilege.
Mr. Cooper, do you intend to make an opening statement?
I have no opening statement.
What do you expect? And then there's the emails that were leaked from Colin Powell's account just from last month. It shows him trashing Donald Trump. And what do you expect? He voted for and supported Barack Obama twice. The media is making this big deal. Oh, he's a Republican. He supported Obama. Okay, but he trashed Hillary. He said, sad thing. HRC could have killed this 2 years ago by merely telling everyone honestly what she had done and not trying to tie it to me. He said, I told her staff 3 times not to try that. I had to throw a mini tantrum at a Hamptons party to get their attention. She keeps tripping into these character minefields, he said. Joining us now to weigh in on this and much, much more is the Emmy Award-winning journalist Sharyl Attkisson, host of Full Measure with Sharyl Attkisson, and author of Stonewalled, My Fight for Truth Against the Forces of Obstruction, Intimidation, and Harassment in Obama's Washington. Hello, Sharyl.
Hey, how are you?
Good, good. So quite a mess going out on there at Capitol Hill yesterday. What do you make of these 3 guys taking the fifth and Pagliano not even showing up?
Well, when that many people think that things they could say might incriminate themselves in some sort of criminal wrongdoing, I think that's telling, and I think that's kind of to be expected. We did hear a bit from Josh Cooper. I thought it was interesting. He seemed quite forthcoming. He was not involved in, I don't think he was involved in the bleach bit deletion of emails and documents after they were subpoenaed the way the other 2 may have been. But we learned that he didn't have a security clearance when he had full access to the server and all the emails and material in it, classified and otherwise. We learned that there were no, even extraordinary or special measures to secure the servers. There were 3 of them that she used, 3 private servers. So we did learn a little bit from him, I think.
Yeah, well, very, very interesting. And now, what do you make of the Colin Powell story? It just keeps getting, in my view, worse and worse for her. I mean, he warned her. He said she started all this, he refers to June, which was long, long, long before he ever had any conversation with her about email. And yet the Clinton campaign, of course, has tried to say, well, Colin Powell told me he did it, so I did it. And there's no comparison to be made.
There's no doubt that Hillary Clinton had been told and was well aware on many occasions of the chances that she was taking when she was using her personal servers and emails. And I put a timeline after kind of dissecting the FBI summary on SharylAttkisson.com. And what I saw in there was that very early on, the security memo from the State Department warned Hillary Clinton, her chief of staff, that it was risky to do what they were doing, to use their personal devices, yet they continued to do it. That was almost as she entered the State Department. She took her first foreign trip to Asia, and upon her return was told specifically that there was intel concerning her vulnerability of using the BlackBerry during her recent trip to Asia. She acknowledged it in an email and told him personally, I get it, and yet continued to do this. I mean, there are just countless instances that we've seen in writing where there were referrals to people discussing how risky this was. So there's no doubt in my mind that, this was very clear to Mrs. Clinton as she used this private server.
All right, let's move on to the health issue. And you also are right about that at SharylAttkisson.com. You talk about the news media's miscalculation on her health. I'm waiting for the media to say, okay, when did Hillary have the chest X-ray? Because that's the only way you diagnose pneumonia from bronchitis. What hospital? Is it 1 lung? Is it 2? What kind of bacteria is it? What kind of pneumonia is it? What kind of medication is she taking? I haven't heard any of those brought up once by anyone.
And I just play the substitution game as always. And I believe that if Donald Trump collapsed or semi-collapsed, had pneumonia, any of that, I think it would have been just deluging the headlines, I should say, all over, top to bottom. It still would be. So I think, it did finally get some coverage. It was slow. If you started to look around when it first happened, there was very little on the news. I was surprised it wasn't breaking news on the major news websites or anything for quite some time. I think, again, that would have been different if it had been Donald Trump. I don't think they're treated the same way. And then, the irony that the news media that declared the questions to be conspiracy theory, which is astroturf language intended to make people not ask the question, has nothing to do with the conspiracy. But those who labeled it conspiracy theory immediately said, well, now it's not. So, it's as if the news media thinks it's the arbiter of, what's true and what's not. In fact, the news media appears to have been wrong as it declared all of this debunked, tinfoil hat theory stuff.
Right. I mean, now let me ask you your opinion, because you're not a doctor and I'm not a doctor. Did you believe that that this was pneumonia? Do you believe that she passed out or I won't say stumbled because that's when you trip to me, but she collapsed because of dehydration, and then she tells Anderson Cooper she got in the car, she had a drink of water, and she was fine. And then Brian Fallon tells us, her campaign manager, when she got to Chelsea's house, she was running around with the kids. Now, if you're clinically dehydrated, Sharyl, I'm no doctor, clinically dehydrated to the point of passing out, a glass of water is not going to fix you. You got to get intravenous electrolytes and all that stuff.
Well, again, like you say, I'm not a doctor. I have 2 responses to that. I can only go by what President Clinton said on the news yesterday. He said that she frequently has this happen. Then he changed that to rarely, but, several times over the years. I don't know anybody in my personal life that frequently or even periodically rarely has gotten dehydrated and fallen, over and over again. But my second answer to that question is, does that matter? I mean, I like to say any of us could drop dead tomorrow. There could be undiagnosed illnesses that anybody could have. So people have to decide how much that does or doesn't matter. But I do think by President Clinton's own statement, she's had something that's, happened to her or been ongoing for years.
Right.
And, if you remember before the Benghazi committee hearings, which she canceled her first appearance, she disappeared for a number of days, during which time there was a similar MO, only it went on longer. The State Department didn't tell us what happened to her. So she was just out of the public light.
Yep.
And then came different stories. First it was a cold, then it was a cold and a fall, then it was a concussion. And then Bill Clinton later wrote in a book, it took her something like 6 months
Yep.
to fully recover from that.
Yep.
So I do think there's more. Whether it matters or not and how much it matters, I don't know. And again, not a medical doctor, but it's certainly, I think, more than the event that we saw on September 11th.
What do you think? I want to get your plug in for your show too. What do you think of CBS editing out Bill Clinton saying frequent?
Well, we do make editing choices, and people said, how could 3 seconds matter? Well, on evening news, I can tell you, you do sometimes try to save 2 or 3 seconds. But on the other hand, that's a judgment call, and I would not have allowed that to be edited out if I had any say, because for the very reason that people would look at it this way. It actually mattered in that bite. It was substantive. It wasn't just a stammer. And as you know, they edited out after President Obama said that he didn't call the Benghazi attacks terrorist attacks.
Right.
CBS didn't air that at the time, and in fact aired different excerpts that made it sound the opposite way. There was some selective editing going on there I wrote about in my book. So this is not the first time that's happened.
What's coming up on the show, Full Measure, this Sunday? We got 25 seconds.
We're going to talk a little bit about the emails still, but our main story is Maine's governor. He's bombastic, he's been criticized as racist, and he's also reformed welfare as they know it. And even though he's sworn off the press, we have an interview with him on Saturday.
Oh, great. And of course, he left that very colorful voicemail not too long ago. Sharyl Attkisson, thank you so much. Always great to talk to you. Our political panel is next. Don't go away, folks.